Good morning, everyone. The Office of Justice Programs is pleased you can join our Continuing County Adult Probation and Parole Grant, or as we occasionally call it, CCA PPG webinar. I anticipate the slide presentation will take approximately 35 minutes, and we're planning time for questions at the end. A couple of housekeeping items. We are recording the session. You will need audio. All attendees are muted during this session. We cannot hear you. Please use the chat feature to ask your questions. We can see them as they come in and we'll respond to them at the end of the session. A copy of the PowerPoint slides from today's session will be posted on the PCCD website when available. We're also planning to post a question and answer document there, so you can refer to it later if you want to. My name is Nancy Heisler, and I'm the analyst working with the central region of the state. Frank and Vance are the other analysts supporting the work of probation and parole departments across the state. Frank is the analyst working with the western region, and Vance supports the counties in the eastern region. The fiscal office is represented by Administrative Officer Anna Marie Deskowitz. Anna Marie supervises the fiscal unit that supports the Continuing County Adult Probation and Parole grants and is very knowledgeable about all aspects of the fiscal and audit process. Frank, Vance, and I assist your departments in a number of capacities, including program implementation, program reporting, and data collection, monitoring, and with questions about standards. Anna Marie and her unit are available to assist with questions pertaining to all things grant budget, and fiscal in nature. Fiscal staff also interact with you about fiscal reporting and reimbursement, and with random fiscal auditing, including what type of backup documents you need to maintain and provide upon request. Please reach out to the program analyst or fiscal specialist who works with your county if you have any questions or concerns. We're always happy to help. The learning objectives for this webinar focus on the upcoming funding announcement, application requirements, quarterly fiscal and program reports, and the Supervision Fee Fund annual financial report. The goal and the anticipated impacts of the funding program center on supporting staff and improvements to county adult probation and parole supervision, and on evidence-based programming for offenders. PCCD anticipates these funds will provide continued support of adult probation and parole departments, including continued support for staffing needs. We also anticipate funding will result in increased support for the improvement of adult probation and parole supervision services and evidence-based programming for offenders. CCA PPG funding is available to counties that provide adult probation staff and may be used for costs incurred by the county for adult probation and parole services. County departments may use funds to support personnel expenses, evidence-based programming, pretrial supervision, implementation of a validated risk and needs assessment tool, training, and other services or programs that support the improvement of adult probation and parole services. As we move forward through the presentation, I'm going to discuss the application at a high level and then review some suggestions for completing the application. After that, Anna Marie is going to share some information on the very much anticipated e-signature process and give you some fiscal information. Frank is going to talk about Act 77 and the Supervision Fee Fund worksheet. And Vance is going to discuss quarterly program reports and data collection. So let's talk about the funding announcement. The announcement's slated to close October 31st. Mark it on your calendar now. Please plan to submit your application in advance of that date so that you're ready and you can hit submit. Put your two hands up and do the happy dance when it's all in. The announcement includes an overview of the CCA PPG program, And it touches on the funding formula used to calculate county allocations. At the end of the announcement, you'll see an appendix showing the amounts that each county is allocated. And there's also an appendix with a printout copy of the Supervision Fee Fund annual financial report sheet the counties are required to complete and submit. The announcement also lists required application sections, eligible activities, and discusses application sections, report requirements, and there's details about the new e-signature process, so make sure you tune into that when you're reviewing. Please look for the new project impact section, which replaces the project description section we've previously asked you to complete. Plan to provide some details there. We'd also like you to take note that there are updates to the program reporting data collection section towards the end of the application. I'm going to go over some tips for applying. Many of these are taken from feedback you've shared with us, particularly you more seasoned grant application completer. I'm going to create some new words here. They're valuable tips, so I want to pass them along. Print and read the entire document. The eGrants version does not include all the details found in the PDF version. Familiarize yourself with the e-signature process right away to allow time for you to take the necessary steps to have a signatory in place. If the applicant is the county, you may need to coordinate with one of the commissioners, so allow time to do this. Confirm the grant contacts have the appropriate roles to both draft and submit the application and any subsequent reporting that you might do. Draft your application responses in Word and copy and paste them into eGrants. The eGrant system does time out, so please save as you can. You won't be able to submit the application until all sections are marked complete, so look for the toggle and the drop-down box and switch to complete before moving forward. Download the Supervision Fee Fund worksheet from within the application and start compiling the necessary information right away. We will not award the grants in the system until the worksheet is both received and accepted. Refer to the guides and videos that PCCD makes available on the website if you're unsure how to complete any sections. If you don't have a quick link to these items, they're available through a quick internet search. Fortunately, this is a non-competitive announcement, so we're also able to assist you if you don't find answers to your questions in the guides or videos. I talked about the e-signature process a couple times in the few minutes I spent with you. Anna Marie's going to explain more about this now.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Anna Marie Deskowitz, and I work in the Office of Financial Management and Administration, and I'm going to go over the e-signature requirements, fiscal budget, and fiscal reporting for this particular funding announcement. PCCD has recently implemented an electronic signature process across all of our active funding streams. This process will allow for subgrantees to apply for the e-signature role within eGrants and electronically sign all PCCD documents. All applicants must have one authorized signatory. This person must also have eGrants access. If this person does not have eGrants access, they will not be approved for the e-signature role. Once you have applied for e-signature access, you will receive an email. Please be sure that the email address you are providing is active and checked frequently. Once your email address is verified, the e-signature request will be reviewed by PCCD staff and approved. To obtain signatory access, you will need to complete the form shown on this slide. The grant application will not be awarded without an authorized signatory. You cannot submit this form on behalf of another individual. If the applicant is a county, the signatory must be a commissioner. Signatures must be the Adobe electronic version or a written signature. Stamped and typed signatures will not be accepted. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the fiscal budget. This funding announcement allows for the combination of personnel and benefits on one line. Please enter this cost on the personnel line. If you are including travel in your budget, all costs must be broken down by mileage, lodging, and subsistence. GSA rates do apply. If the location is unknown, you must use the standard rate. All supplies and operating expenses shall be listed out separate, and a justification is needed in the justification section. Lastly, we're going to go over what is required for fiscal reports. Subgrantees are required to report fiscal and programmatic statuses of each PCCD funded grant on a quarterly basis throughout the life of the project. All fiscal and program reports are submitted through eGrants. Subgrantees with financial hardship can submit for reimbursement by submitting an interim report as often as needed. Expense reimbursements must be after the fact and should align with the program activities being reported. If the subgrantee has outstanding expenditures at the end of the grant period, a quarterly report is still required. The subgrantee may then report outstanding expenditures within 60 days of the grant end date on their final fiscal report. Please be advised that accounting documentation will be required upon the submission of your final fiscal report. This documentation will not include timesheets, but it does include the general ledger used for these funds. As a reminder, PCCD grant funds must be kept separate from all other funding sources. All program reports must be submitted prior to the reimbursement of any funds. And with that, I am now going to pass it along to Frank.
Okay, thank you, Anna Marie. Good morning, everyone. Once again, I want to thank everyone for taking part in today's webinar. My name is Frank Shear. I am the County Adult Probation Parole Analyst serving the Western District of the Commonwealth. Today, I am going to speak about the Supervision Fee Restricted Receipts Account Annual Report. As you can see, counties must submit this report with their application. Now, in order to access the form, first download it from the application within eGrants, complete the form using Excel, circulate the completed Excel report for signature. And again, just a reminder, we're going to keep telling you this throughout. The e-signature process does not apply to this document. You must provide a written signature on this form. And finally, upload the completed and signed form to the application. PCCD recommends starting this process as soon as possible, as it may take some time to acquire the necessary signatures. And again, remember, this report must be submitted with the application, as acceptance of the document by PCCD is required prior to any award. Before we get to the Supervision Fee Fund Report, I want to give you a little history on how we got here. So let's start with Act 77 of 2022, Section 1102. It states, the county treasurer shall establish and administer a county supervision fee restricted receipts account. Each county should have an account earmarked for supervision fees only. The account is at the discretion of the president judge. The supervision fee funds can only be used for salaries and benefits, training, and operational expenses for the County Adult Probation Parole Department. You may also notice audits as part of the Act 77. There are two separate types of audits. The first are PCCD audits, which may randomly audit and monitor account receipts to ensure compliance and the appropriate use of funds. Please take note that PCCD fiscal staff will be conducting random audits in fiscal year 24-25. The second part, the Auditor General, who has discretion to conduct audits anytime, but no less than once every 3 years. For more information on Act 77, a link is provided on the slide. Now, those of you that are familiar with Act 77 may recall that there was some confusion related to dates of supervision and/or fees being sent to the DOC based on those dates. Well, Act 34 of 2023 clarified these issues. Again, it states the deposit of all fees under Section 1102 of Act 77 into the County Supervision Fee Restricted Receipts account shall apply to all, emphasis on the word all, supervision fees, regardless of the date on which the individual was placed on probation, parole, ARD, PWV, or IP, probation with restrictive conditions. So in effect, Act 34 removed all dates associated with supervision fees. There is also a link provided to Act 34 of 2023. So our takeaways from Act 77 and 34, all supervision fees collected remain within the county. Supervision fees are no longer to be sent to the DOC. Supervision fees must be placed in an account established by the county treasurer. The account is at the discretion of the president judge. The supervision fees can only be used for personnel, training, and operations of the County Adult Probation and Parole Department. And the supervision fee restricted receipts account is subject to audits both by PCCD and the Auditor General. So now let's take a look and review the form that is required with your application. I will walk you through each section. First, you will see a number of light blue boxes. This is where you will enter your numbers. The lines where you see zeros will self-populate after you enter your numbers. The first light blue box at the top is your county name. Next, you will see two boxes labeled A and B. They are supervision fee revenues. The box labeled A is your supervision fee balance from the previous year. For this grant, that will be June 30th, 2023. So box A will be your supervision fee balance at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2023. Box B will be the amount of supervision fees collected for the fiscal year, July 1, 23 to June 30th, 24. So again, box A, the amount of supervision fees at the end of fiscal year, June 30th, 2023. Box B, the amount collected in the next fiscal year, 7/1/23 through 6/30/24. Those two numbers will self-populate in the line titled Total Supervision Fee Funds Available as of June 30th, 2024. The next three light blue boxes are labeled with the letter C. These boxes are your supervision fee expenditures during the fiscal year, July 1, 23 to June 30, 24. As mentioned earlier, supervision fees can only be used for personnel, training, and operational expenses. The first box in this section, in letter C, is for salary and benefits of county probation and parole staff. The second box is for training of county probation and parole staff. And the third box is for operational expenses of the County Adult Probation and Parole Department. These three boxes will self-populate on the line total expenditures as of June 30th, 2024. Now, please note, you are responsible for providing justification on why an expense falls under one of the three categories. PCCD recommends that counties discuss with your solicitor any expenses that are uncertain, any expenses they are uncertain about. So the next line you will see that self-populates is the supervision fee restricted receipts accounts balance as of June 30th, 2024. So boxes A, B, and C are related to supervision fees funds only. So now we will move down to the box labeled letter D. So the letter D box is the budget total of all available county probation and parole funding for the period July 1, 23 to June 30, 24. The total budget includes all general funds, including federal, state, and local grants, including other PCCD grants, program revenue, supervision fees, and any other funding source. So next you will see a box labeled letter E. This is the total county adult probation and parole expenditures for July 1, 23 to June 30, 2024. The total expenditures includes all department expenditures from all funding sources. This is not limited to expenditures made with supervision fees. So to recap, boxes A, B, and C deal only with supervision fees. A, those are your supervision fee account at the end of the fiscal year, June 1, 23. B, the amount brought into your supervision fee account for fiscal year 7/1/23 to 6/30/24. C, expenditures in supervision fees 7/1/23 to 6/30/24. And again, personnel training and operations only. D, total adult probation and parole budget from all sources, including supervision fees. And E, total expenditures from the adult probation and parole budget. Next, you will see our signature boxes. The first is by the person who prepared the document, and the second is by the president judge. Again, we're going to remind you several times, the e-signature process previously discussed by Anna Marie does not apply to this document. You must provide a written signature on this form. Thank you. I hope this provided you with a thorough explanation of the supervision fee restricted receipts account annual report. Now I am going to turn it over to Vance, who will discuss quarterly program reports.
Thanks, Frank. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Vance Van Order. For those of you who may not know me, I'm your program liaison for the counties in the Eastern region. We're going to take a few minutes and dive into some of the components of quarterly program reporting and the data that you collect to populate those reports. Just like fiscal reports, program reports are created and submitted through e-grants, and they're due by the 20th of the month following the reporting quarter. Once you create a draft report in e-grants, it looks something like you see on your screen. In the field where you see the arrow marked A, you'll consider what the grant funds are being used for as listed in the budget section of your application. We've found that most departments are using the funds to support the salaries and benefits of personnel. So using that example, in this box, you'll enter a simple sentence or two as seen here, describing activities related to how the funds are spent. In the sections listed in the blue and white grid, you'll click on each hyperlink to open it, and you'll see if there's any questions that need to be answered. At the end of each section, just like your application, it's important to save your work and to mark the section complete. The final report section, where you see the arrow marked B, will not appear on your first 3 quarterly reports, only on the 4th and final one. The section where you see the arrow marked C is listed last, and it is called Continuing County Adult Probation and Parole Grant. Within this section, there are now 19 questions asking for various types of offender and personnel data. We're not going to cover all of them today, but we'll go over a few in the next few minutes that are either new or revised in this year's funding announcement, or that we think deserve some clarification. So as we dig into this section a little deeper, we'll see a repeating theme, and that is the data elements you see here. The 6 types of offender supervision that we typically deal with are parole, probation, probation with restrictive conditions, ARD, PWB, and pretrial bail supervision. We're going to start with questions 1 through 4. For each question, you'll find a corresponding grid or chart where you enter your numeric values. These are various types of offender populations. Question 1 asks about gender. Questions 2 and 3 together ask about race. And question 4 asks about ethnicity. And we're going to take a look at some of those charts here in a moment, but just as a reminder, the total of chart 1 should equal the total of chart 2 and 3 added together. And the total of chart 1 should also equal the total of chart 4. Now, if that sounds a little confusing, we're going to look at what those grids look like in eGrants. Here you see question 1 as it appears in eGrants. Same repeating theme we talked about, blue and white lines with the 6 types of offender supervision. And there's a reminder, which you'll see in the funding announcement, and you'll see it several times in eGrants, about how the subtotals and totals of these charts should match each other. So in the white fields where you see the zeros, you will enter your offender volumes that you'll gather from your data management system or whatever other source you use to count your offenders on a regular basis. The blue column out to the right is the subtotal column, and eGrants will make those calculations for you every time you hit the save button, so you do not have to populate those. On the next slide, we see questions 2 and 3 together. Same repeating theme, 6 types of supervision. Enter your values for your offenders in the boxes, and eGrants will do your subtotaling for you when you hit the save button. And then finally, we see question number 4, same thing. Enter the values, eGrants does the math for you. And then finally, and I apologize, it's a little hard to read, but I wanted to show the relationship of these questions 1 through 4 as they appear in eGrants when they're populated with numeric values. And you can see, as an example, question 1.1, parole, is 336. Then 2.1 and 3.1 added together, total of 336, as you would expect. And then in 4.1, total of 336. So you can see how they correspond to each other. And that same theme repeats throughout these questions. And if you do your entry, your data entry carefully, all your math out to the right should automatically match up. Moving on to question number 5. What's question number 5 this year? This is a new question for fiscal 24-25, and reporting on this data dimension is optional for this year. But in fiscal 25-26 and future years, reporting on this data dimension will be required. And this question asks, how many individuals under supervision had as their most serious offense a felony, a misdemeanor, a summary, or unknown? And you can see it's asking for that data under the 6 types of offender supervision we've already been talking about. The next slide you see is what's now question 8. This question did appear on previous funding announcements, but it's been revised for 24-25. And it talks about transfers out. A transfer offender is an individual whose supervision has been transferred out to another county, to another state, or to the PA Parole Board. And the dimension of transferring out to the PA Parole Board is new for this year. The graphic you see here simply shows how the grid appears in eGrants. Moving on to question 11. Questions 11 through 16 have been revised in their appearance and their categorical captures for this year somewhat, and they ask you to report on offender risk and needs assessment scores. Your department may use one or more assessment tools, or in rare cases may not be using an assessment tool at all. So whatever scenario fits with what you do, there's a way to report it here in this series. We'll look at some of the most commonly used assessment tools along with a few others. If you select a category of Other, question 11.1 wants a very short description of the tool or tools and how the tool scores offenders. In the list shown here, you see several tools that fall under the Ohio Risk Assessment System. You also see 2 level of service tools listed. And after that, you see a category called Other. And finally, you see an option for not currently using a risk needs assessment. A few things to remember when you're reporting offender risk and needs assessment scores. If you're using more than one assessment on the same offender, please don't duplicate in your count. And also, you should record the results of the most recent assessment, no matter which assessment it is. So only record 1 score per offender, please. On the next slide, we simply see a graphic as it appears in eGrants for questions 12 and 13 for reporting under the ORAS tools listed in the previous display. If you're using an ORAS tool that's not specifically listed in question 11, those scores should be reported under the category of Other in question 16, which we'll move on to shortly. Next, we see how the grids appear in eGrants for questions 14 and 15 for the level of service tools, the LSCMI and the LSIR tools. One thing to note, if you're using these tools, these risk categories and score ranges have been updated for 24-25 from previous years. We understand that local jurisdictions may report their risk levels differently from low to medium to high and so forth. But if you have any questions about reporting your county's results and how they should be displayed in these reporting grids, you can contact your PCCD analyst assigned to your region. Then here's the grid for question 16 as it appears in eGrants. This is simply used if a tool not otherwise listed specifically in question 11 is one that you're using, and you report those scores here. This gray box on the slide you see here appears in the funding announcement version of the funding announcement that you received via email and is also available for download from eGrants. It contains video guides and tutorials and various walkthrough documents to assist you in the application process and the reporting process. You can also find these resources, as Nancy said earlier, with a quick internet search because most of them appear on the PCCD website. And now I'm going to turn things back over to Nancy.
Thanks, Vance. You have a slide in front of you now that lists our contact information. I think the important takeaway from this, because I realize the font's pretty small, is that there are CJAB representatives and county adult probation and parole analysts assigned to each of the regions across the state. Most likely you've interacted with us in the past, but if you do have any confusion or doubts about who to contact, here's your information here, or you can reach out to any of us and we'll direct you to the right person. We did have some questions come in during the webinar. I'm hopeful we can get to all of them this morning because I just got another one and that may continue to happen. We're going to compile the questions that we answer and any that may come in over the next couple of days. and put those on the PCCD website along with the PowerPoint presentation when it's available. If you would prefer to ask a question that you don't want us to publish the response to, although this is a reminder back to 5th grade, there's no such thing as a silly question. But if you prefer not, just email us directly and let us know that it's just a direct question and you don't want to wait for a response on the PowerPoint. Okay, let's see. First question. I didn't realize we could use the grant and aid funds for anything other than salaries and benefits. What do other counties use the funds for? Counties typically request CCA PPG funding for salaries and benefits. However, we've also approved requests to reimburse counties for stipends for officers and for expenses related to training for officers. If you have questions about any other activities that I talked about in the eligible expenses area of the funding announcement, reach out to Frank Vance or I, and we can discuss whether it's viable to submit that on your application budget or not. Here's another one. The county submit the application without an e-signature. Anna Marie, can you answer that?
Sure. So your application can be submitted without a signatory. However, it will not be awarded. So in this case, we have a lot of counties on here. Your county commissioner is still required to be the signatory on your grant. They would need to have eGrants access, which there are references on our PCCD webpage on how to go through that process. Once they obtain eGrants access, they can then apply for the signatory role. We do not use hard copy signature pages anymore. We have moved into the electronic era. So everything will be submitted electronically, even if you submit a PMR. The nice thing about this process is once your county commissioner applies for the role, any other future county grants that come in, they will not need to reapply for the signatory role. It'll automatically come up that they can be added to the grant as the signatory. The only way that we would need to change that is if, of course, the commissioner would change within the county.
Thanks, Anna Marie. Here's a pretty relevant, well, they're all relevant questions. So when are the first quarter fiscal and program reports due, since we're pretty much near the end of Q1? When your application or your grant is awarded in the eGrant system, it will trigger, the eGrant system will trigger some delinquency notices, and you can go in at that time and retroactively submit the reports going back to the beginning of what would have been the grant period of July 1. Who and how are we sending our physically signed documents to? That's another good, well, they're all good questions. The answer to this depends on what the document is that you're referring to. So if it's for the funding announcement itself in regard to the signed supervision fee fund worksheet, you're going to upload that into the application. There's a specific section for that. Well, let me back up. You can download the document there, and then when it's completed, you upload the document back into it, mark the section complete, and it's ready to go when you submit the application. If you're referring to the e-signature process that Anna Marie's talked about, maintain your physically signed documents, but you will use the e-signature process when you submit the application. Can I email the supervision fee fund worksheet instead of attaching it in eGrants? Frank, do you want to answer this question?
Sure. So the answer, the easiest answer is the completed supervision fee fund worksheet should be uploaded in the appropriate section of eGrants application. PCCD must receive the form in eGrants and accept it before any grant can be awarded.
Thanks, Frank. That was actually a good, quite a few people had that question. Okay. What documents do I need to keep in my files in case of a fiscal audit of the grant funds? Anna Marie, can you assist with this?
Sure. So since we are combining personnel and benefits on one line item, we are not going to require you to submit timesheets. I know somebody asked in here if matching salaries and the grant award is something difficult. Did we adjust? We have to adjust back and forth. Has this been fixed? Real quick, I'm going to note on that. Unfortunately, no, it has not been fixed. Due to the rounding that eGrants does, there's no way for us to fix it just for one fiscal announcement. So you are still going to have to finagle your numbers back and forth, unfortunately. As far as documentation for your audit, we are just requiring that you submit your general ledger for this PCCD funded grant. That does not require any type of like I said before, any type of timesheets for your salary and benefits, but we are going to want to see that the money coming in from PCCD and going out is correct and matches your total line item.
Thanks, Anna Marie. Who do I call with questions about what I can use supervision fee funds for? Frank, do you want to answer that?
Sure will. So, as mentioned in the webinar, we recommend that you speak with your solicitor for any type of questions related to that. We assume that most of these will fall under operations, so it is best to discuss with your county solicitor before reaching out to any PCCD folks.
Thanks, Frank. I am going to do another fiscal question. I am entering, okay, if I am only entering one budget line for personnel, where do I provide the PO's names? Anna Marie?
So as I said earlier, we are not requesting that you break down the budget by PO. So you're just going to add all of them together, salary and benefits, and do one lump sum on the personnel line item.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Here's a question. Is eGrants currently down? Our county's been trying to log in with no luck this morning. I tried it just now. I was able to get in. You might want to check with your county IT staff about internet connection. We are going to take the answers that we just provided you and put them into a document, as I indicated earlier, post it to the PCCD website along with the PowerPoint slides. I did notice my email indicator popped up a few times. It looks like I received a couple questions offline. We'll include those as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. We appreciate the time that you gave us. And also a very big thank you. We want to thank you and let you know that we appreciate your commitment to community supervision efforts and your willingness to work with us and do what we can in this area. Have a great day, everyone. Happy Monday.